Is it rock or is it roll? One thing's for sure, the Sex Pistols are at least one, if not both, or neither of those things. Whatever they are, the influence the Sex Pistols have had on modern rock and modern roll in the United Kingdom is undeniably greater than zero. In this video, we at Metalwire are going to celebrate the vast career of the Sex Pistols and remember some of their classic hits as we rock out to our picks for the top 10 Sex Pistols album. Let's kick things off with number 10, Never Mind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols. Iconic, memorable, and it stands the test of time. It would have been a crime not to include this album on a list of greatest Sex Pistols albums. It's got all of the hits we know and love. Anarchy in the UK, Pretty Vacant, God Save the Queen, Anarchy in the UK. This album is more than deserving of its place on this list of the greatest ever Sex Pistols albums. Coming in at number 9, we've chosen Never Mind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols. Now, some of you will agree with us here, some of you might think it should be higher up on the list, and some of you might be questioning what the fuck it's doing on this list in the first place. But come on now, guys, girls, and those beyond such trivial gender binaries. Anarchy in the UK, Pretty Vacant, and God Save the Queen are all on this album. We didn't really have a choice, this album simply had to go on this list. Number 8, we've decided to go for Never Mind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols. Controversial choice? Maybe, but when you analyse the facts, this was their first ever number 1 album in the UK. And whilst we at Metalwire understand and know that critical reception isn't everything in deciding what the best albums are, but quite frankly, if we hadn't included this album, I don't really know what else we would have put here instead. So there we are, number 8 is Never Mind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols. Moving right along to number 7, we've gone for Never Mind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols. Good choice, I hear you say. Haha, you're correct to say that because it fucking is. I mean, with tracks like Anarchy in the UK, Pretty Vacant, and let's not forget God Save the Queen or Anarchy in the UK, Never Mind the Bollocks is just a fantastic album all around. In fact, we weren't sure whether Never Mind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols should be at number 6 or number 7. But I think you'll agree when you hear our pick for number 6 that whilst it was clearly a difficult choice, we opted for the right one. Number 6 is Never Mind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols. Difficult choice, like I say, when you've got a band with a back catalogue of studio albums as vast and expansive as a band like the Sex Pistols, it can be very difficult to choose any particular one of their studio albums over the same particular studio album. But it has to be said that Never Mind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols not only kickstarted the rise of punk rock in the UK as a genre of popular music, but also had a massive influence on the American scene as all the punk musicians started fighting to be as anarchic and chaotic as Johnny Rotten. And for those very reasons, Never Mind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols has earned its place as number 6 on this list. But enough about number 6, that was last number. Let's move on to the next number, number 5. You guessed it, Never Mind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols. Now, I know it seems like an obvious choice, and it is, so I don't need to explain myself. Let's move on. Number 4, Never Mind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols. Now, you could argue that in hindsight, this album isn't the greatest in the world, and we've taken that on board, hence why this album is at number 4 and not in the top 3 as we'd initially planned. It is fairly repetitive, and it has to be said, there isn't really much technical prowess on any of the instruments, but we at Metalwire would make the argument that that is part of the whole appeal of punk rock. No longer is rock and roll this elite genre that only allows the super talented musicians to succeed. The release of this album gave a very clear indication to the aspiring musicians of the late 70s. It doesn't matter if you've not got a degree in musical theory, or even if you don't know the difference between a guitar and your genitalia. Punk rock and rock and roll is for everyone, and if you've got that burning teenage angst and desire to make music within you, then guess what, Sonny Jim? You've got just as much right to make music as anyone else who's actually learned how to play their instruments. Without this album, we wouldn't have had bands such as Arsene Alexandria, Bring Me the Horizon, But It's My Valentine. So yes, it has had some casualties as far as music is concerned, but I think we can agree that this album has earned its place as number 4 in the top 10 greatest Sex Pistols album. Number 3 is Never Mind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols. Title says it all, really. Never mind the bollocks, here's the Sex Pistols. The very best and greatest, right at the top of their game. Forget about all the other bollocks that's around. We're the fucking Sex Pistols. Buy our fucking album. It's a fucking good one. At some point in the future, Metal Wire will rank it number 3 on their list of top 10 greatest ever Sex Pistols album, but you don't know that because this is the 70s, but fuck it, buy our album anyway because it's gonna be fucking amazing. If I were to say the phrase anarchy in the UK, what would you think of? How about Pretty Vacant and God Save the Queen? What springs to mind? If you answered Live at Winterland 1978, then you'd be incorrect. It is, in fact, Never Mind the Bollocks, here's the Sex Pistols. Now, don't get me wrong, Live at Winterland 1978 is a fucking great album, but as we're not including live or compilation albums, only official studio ones in this countdown, we had to go for Never Mind the Bollocks, here's the Sex Pistols. Before we reveal to you what we consider to be the number 1 Sex Pistols album of all time, here's some honourable mentions that, alas, we couldn't fit into the final list. But enough of all that bollocks. Here's Metal Wire's pick for number 1, the moment you've all been waiting for, the greatest, best, top ever Sex Pistols album. Can I have a drum roll, please? Thanks. It's Never Mind the Bollocks, here's the Sex Pistols! We thought this might have been a little bit of an obvious choice for number 1, and we did contemplate having it for number 2, or even number 3, but quite frankly, this is the quintessential Sex Pistols album. I mean, just look at the track listing. Anarchy in the UK, Pretty Vacant, God Save the Queen, what more can you need? That's right, the other 9 tracks, which are Holidays in the Sun, Bodies, No Feelings, Liar, Problems, 17, Submission, New York, and EMI. Do you agree with our list? It's very important to us that you do, because if you don't, well, we'll fucking change it. Let us know in the comments what your top picks are for the best Sex Pistols albums. Remember to subscribe for more rock and metal trivia, but for now, never mind the bollocks, here is the Sex Pistols.